Hello, everybody, and welcome to Nace Star League once again. Now, do not get confused. Yes, this is Overwatch. Yes, I'm usually on Rocket League, but things are a little different this week. I'm Septilance, joined by LaFon. We are kicking today off strong. Mizzou versus Irvine Valley. Von, these teams coming in with a lot to prove.
Yeah, I mean, we're heading towards the three-quarter way of the season at this point, right? Time is ebbing away, and playoffs are on the horizon as a result, and that means that at this stage of the game, you need to be locked in, not just in terms of performance, but in terms of your standings as well. Let's get a look at the schedule for this day here for the Tuesday for Overwatch 2. And of course, as we said, starting off with Mizzou versus Irvine Valley, but some good games on the docket after that. Now, let's dial in on game number 1, though, because we do have to start here. And I mean, with that highlight with the highlight of it being, time to kind of step into position here for the playoff race, I mean, Mizzou, we have to argue, is in a much better position.
Oh, absolutely. Just looking at statistics alone here, Mizzou finding themselves 4-2 on the series. Unfortunately, Irvine is the opposite of that. We've got a palindrome between them, 4-2-2-4. And Mizzou comes in very strong in every esport. We saw them in Rocket League yesterday, winning in a 3-2 fashion. They're going to come in today, maybe try to make it a little less close, right? Maybe try to win in a 3-0 fashion. Irvine Valley College coming in with a little bit of momentum on their side. They've got 2 victories under their belt, and they're definitely looking to get at least that third. But LaFon, walking into a giant like this is not going to be an easy task.
Yeah, I mean, at this stage of the game, right, when we talk about the playoffs, we know there's a bunch of teams that are undefeated heading into this section of the race, right? So for Mizzou specifically, this is a must-win for them because dropping a third match would be catastrophic in that race when you're playing against teams that are currently sitting at 6-0, heading into that 7-0 marker. And for Irvine Valley, though, I think there's a little bit of a case of playing spoiler, right? Being able to steal away a win here absolutely would be a feather in your cap. And so, I mean, the expectation for them is to come out of the gate swing, try and be as aggressive as possible out the gate, and put Mizzou on notice.
Yeah, Mizzou getting a little bit of a mild advantage here as they do get to pick our starting map, which is going to be Oasis. Now, it's going to be a loser pick afterward, but the map type itself remains the same. Control, hybrid, escort, push, control. And starting with Oasis is going to be really fascinating, LaFon, because we talked about this in the green room as well. We expect so often for it to be Lijiang Tower that to get a different control map is a breath of fresh air.
This is only the third time all season, in fact, on broadcast that we have seen a map not Lijiang Tower. And getting a sense of Oasis is going to be really important, right? There aren't a ton of, when we look at control, there are 5 options in general, so there is a lot of variability here that has not yet been tested. When we get to hybrid, that's not, of course, the case. There's only 3 maps there. But for this first round, Oasis, I think one of the things that we can definitely expect is that it's not going to play out similarly to many of the games that we see on broadcast before, right? Historically, when you have Lijiang Tower, you expect certain styles, right? We're in a meta right now where I think a lot of styles go in terms of expectations, right? We can see a lot of rush, we can see a lot of dive at times, and team strengths, team identity can play a big factor. So with the fact that we're moving to Oasis, the core ideology of that style, of that stylistic freedom still exists. However, the expression of it can shift a little bit due to the nature of the 3 stages that we have on Oasis compared to Lijiang Tower.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think Oasis is particularly interesting because each of the 3 stages can traditionally call for a different team comp than the other 2. You don't really have that opportunity to just run the same tank over and over. Maybe Wrecking Ball is kind of an exclusion to that. But I think all in all that we are going to be seeing a lot of swaps in all 3 roles. Now, support, a little statistically less likely to see swaps, but DPS and tank, like you said, truly up in the air on what these players want to bring to the table. And it's great to have that in Overwatch because for a long time we've been stuck in these consistent metas of, okay, it's these 6 heroes, or okay, it's these 5 heroes. But right now, it could truly be any hero.
Yeah, I mean, right now what we're looking at, I think in terms of the ideas of, or the meta sort of setups for our patch that we find ourselves in is 3 core compositions, we'll call them.
Yeah.
One is a brawl, right? And that's sort of, you see a lot of Ramatra, you see a lot of Reinhardt and sort of that idea aspect of it. And the second would be dive, right? Winston has been pretty popular as of late. Wrecking Ball, of course, you alluded to moments ago. These two are sort of that second style. The third style is more of a poke style. If we go to, a Circuit Royale, a map that has long sight lines, we expect to see that kind of come forward. Office of Sigma, for example. Probably not to be an expected outcome for this first map. I think we're going to go for that 50-50 between the first two I listed. But at least that option does exist. Maybe on something like University as an option, as a substage, right, with that open sight lines. Even though Brawl, I think, is probably the expected look for that map.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think Brawl is going to be the stage composition we're seeing going into Oasis, and I know that the DPS line itself has a little bit of wiggle room right now. Tracer has been very popular recently with her accidental buff that then turned into a real one. The damage fall off is going to be very helpful there. We know Mei has been making her way up through the ranks right now, a very popular character, one people hate playing against, but in a collegiate setting like this, you're not really here to have fun at the end of it. You're here to win, and if you have to play Mei to do that, well, then so be it. You can play Mei to make it work. We know Cassidy, he's got that super high skill ability of that Magnet Grenade that does 150 damage for free. There's a lot of DPS that can work out. Reaper, he's classic, strong as always. So I think the Brawl is definitely up there, but which DPS fill that Brawl slot can be shaken up a bit.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, obviously playing up what your opponent runs does come to the conversation a little bit. You highlighted Mei, Reaper. We've seen a lot of that. Symmetra has been brought into play in recent time as well. With that being kind of said, obviously we're kind of throwing, major compositions at the screen. But I think that the core discussion still remains that we're looking at two very, or at least a setup for map number 1 is going to identify styles between these squads. Right, for Mizzou, we have a little bit of experience with them. We know kind of what they like to run. We've seen them a little bit, but realistically, there isn't a chance at this stage of the game, to draw back to that playoff race where teams are solidifying their styles. Right, this is where if we see teams struggling with their setups, then you don't have a lot of time to fix it. This is for fine tuning at this stage of the game to get into playoffs. Because when you're in playoffs, you don't have that time to experiment and try new things. So. Realistically, what I'm looking for in this first map, even beyond obviously a team taking, setting the tempo, is that identification of, cohesion and understanding of the comp you selected. And if you're forced to play mystery heroes, if you're forced to swap more than, or forced to swap away from a composition that you feel runs well to counter something that you don't have a solution for, that's also going to be something, a bit of a red flag. And I think those are kind of the things that I'm looking for more than just, the setup for, this is dive, this is brawl, etc. Because again, we're looking to the future, not just the truth of this particular match.
Yeah, and playing Mystery Heroes today would be very on brand. Competitive Mystery Heroes enters the fray for Overwatch today. I placed Plat 2 in it, and I'm pretty sad about that, but it was a lot of fun. So Mystery Heroes is going to be something of a possibility here, just trying to outplay your opponent. And I think that's going to be fascinating because kind of back 2 metas ago, we saw a lot of Winston and then Zarya and then Orisa kind of in this back and forth battle between the 3 of them. And I feel like while we've stepped away a little bit, like you said, looking at more full team compositions, there's still that constant underlying sense that Overwatch presents of how often do I have to swap to be countering the opposing team? It's that sunken cost fallacy of, is the character I'm playing worth it, or should I be swapping to something else with more value? And maybe that's something we're going to be talking a lot about when we jump into this map. I'm sure we're going to be in there in just a couple of minutes, waiting for the players to get ready. And of course, we cannot rush them, so we want them to be at their absolute A game when we kick things off.
Yeah. We could also allude to the fact that, for collegiate specifically, which we find ourselves in, inspiration is drawn from tier 1, right? There hasn't been a lot of tier 1 gameplay recently due to the off season, but this has been a case of teams being forced to identify their own gameplay in sort of setups. And for some teams, it's looked pretty good. For other teams, it's been a bit of a struggle. and you haven't really been able to one trick a style all the way through, right? There has had requirement of flexibility. So we'll see if that plays a part here, or if teams have risen to the occasion all the way throughout today. That's not unique to our first game, obviously. It extends across the in fact, it's extended across most of this season, as most of it will have been played out before any tier 1 gameplay happens. But definitely an interesting little aside to kind of keep in mind when we see, something that may be considered quote unquote outlandish to the grand scheme of Overwatch may end up being played here to great effect because it has been a strength of the team or the player that has selected it.
So Oasis starting off here, map number 1, Mizzou versus Irvine Valley College. And this is going to be a big hill to climb because I think if Mizzou comes out and they establish a very early dominance and a lead against their opponent, that may dictate how the rest of today's momentum may take us. But if we see something come out from Irvine that's immediately there to at least answer Mizzou, maybe not even beat them, but just to give them really a run for their money and go blow for blow with them, that can dictate a different story that could be just around the corner.
With that being said, we start off on City Center here for our first round of Oasis. This is the map that has the most mobility requirement due to the high ground, both in the center of the objective and immediately to one side of it. From the perspective of the team of red, it'll be on the left. With that in mind, we're seeing that dive come to light, or at least most of a dive composition. I expect most Symmetras to switch to a tracer or similar after the teleport out of spawn.
And you nailed it. They both jump right over to that tracer. So we've got Diva versus Wrecking Ball, which is going to be interesting. I think Clairvoyant from the side of Mizzou is really going to struggle with Cats on the Sombra. So I want to keep an eye on Cats and see how their performance takes them throughout this matchup so far. But the first fight, a bit of a sloppy one here. Everybody very spread out. The supports from Irvine get caught out by Mizzou in the back corner, but the tank is there to at least create a little bit of chaos. Tommy Salami goes for a backline flank, but it's Cabby who's the first one to fall instead. Mizzou losing that Mercy takes a lot of damage off the table and removes that resurrection as well. The one person that can't be rezzed is the first to fall. So Mizzou being in a one-player advantage, you think they'd back out, but instead they double down, already finding 2 eliminations of their own. And even outside the map, Clairvoyant doing insane numbers worth of damage. Iggy removed from the fray, and Mizzou trying to win it, but I'm just not sure it's going to be able to happen here.
That being said, actually they can bring this one back. The respawns aren't quite here yet for Irvine Valley.
Yeah, the respawns are not quite online, but I think everybody is back. We're at a full 5v5. If Cabby goes down again, and that should be the nail in the coffin against Mizzou. Tommy Salami taken out. We hear a recall coming through. That's got to be it. Cajun and Rizzer up. Put them down. Mizzou going to lose this first fight, especially as Clairvoyant's mech is sent to the scrapyard. Irvine Valley, first point cap.
Lion and Cajun actually a huge part of that for Irvine Valley, right? The dive setup for those two is critical for this for this engagement from them. Keep in mind that when Cajun sets up a player, that weakens them tremendously, allows Lion to come right back in with the tracer, get that one clip in, and all of a sudden you force resources out from Mizzou before they're truly in. In fact, we're going to see a switch, Cabby going over to the Brigitte rather than the Mercy. It's so much easier to keep yourself alive on this break compared to the Mercy in this patch.
Yeah, absolutely. The Mercy Guardian Angel getting nerfed, like you talked about, is going to be difficult. A 4-man EMP onto Mizzou. Nobody goes down, but a pulse bomb, maybe? No, let's try a minefield. Irvine Valley throwing everything at the wall, desperate to see if any of it will stick, and it's going to be a whip shot that puts them down. Mizzou losing that tracer once again, second time. Tommy Salami's gone down to a Kid Maniac whip shot. Taking that tracer offline, really going to slow Mizzou's roll and make it difficult to re-engage the rest of this combat. Iggy uses the combat roll to stay alive from that spammage, and supports get them back up and running. Discord, 30% additional damage, takes Iggy out of the fight. Mizzou, they've lost one. Levon, I'd like to see either a die or get out situation way longer, because they have made this fight last infinitely longer than I think they should have.
Yeah, absolutely. Now they're stuck in a corner here with no tank, and likely no more existence either. And actually, with that being said, time is no longer on Mizzou's side, right? This is
not at all
been a really expensive fight for them. They commit quite a bit to that last one, and in last fight territories, which is what's going to be here, you have both support ultimates up. All you really have to do is break LOS on the self-destruct, and all of a sudden you're able to out-sustain your opponent. So Mizzou have to do this through good old-fashioned brute force, and they have nothing to brute with.
Brute force and nothing to brute with is not a spot you want to be in. They might be able to take Cajun out early, and with that rally online, a phenomenal eat from Clairvoyant as well. A 180 pulse bomb eat puts Irvine Valley in a pretty uncomfortable spot. Only 4 seconds left, but as Mizzou touches the point, they will force an overtime and put themselves in a driver's seat for the first time of Oasis. Rizzer up is going to fall to Tommy, and that should be the final nail in the coffin. Just a delay of the inevitable here from Irvine Valley. Respawn's not going to return fast enough. Lion falls. I don't think Cajun can do much, and Cabby finally getting a whip shot of their own. Zoo on the board.
I really like the Zenyatta for Irvine Valley does not use the Transcendence though. Rizurap not getting, not biting the bait that was put in, especially because they were so far on the flank of their opponent. The problem with that actually is that because Mizzou had nothing and they still won that fight, they actually have a lot of tools to actually take this next engagement. All they really have to do is dodge this combo of EMP Transcendence, and they'll be in position to clean this up. Now, they can't play too closely together. We'll see if they've scouted out the fact that there's going to be the EMP at the ready. They're playing pretty near each other, which is going to be a tremendous setup for Cats here.
Great setup for Cats. The EMP could be devastating. We see the Transcendence come online, keeping the team up, and poor Iggy doesn't even get to participate in the fight. Kitsune from Pingen trying to keep the team up and running as they lost one of their DPS. Trade out for Zenyatta, a pretty valuable one at that. Transcendence was null and void, essentially. Take that Discord and Harmony Orb offline, keeping it at a 4-4. Mizzou fends off a very hungry Irvine Valley for another combat, but with 2 ultimates just on the horizon. LaFon, what ultimates are you looking at going into this next engagement?
I mean, the duplicate has to be the biggest one here, right? It's going to have to be a case of Iggy taking center stage, and if they win this fight out, all of a sudden they're going to equalize Irvine Valley in percentage.
They'll be able to hit at least 80% if they come out on top of this fight, but if Iggy goes down before they can press Q, it's all null and void. Oh, that pulse is crazy from Lion. Cabby has been removed from the equation. The bomb has to be used. Can Clairvoyant live long enough to remake? It feels like they're going to be able to. Both Brigida's offline. Mizzou have the numbers advantage once again, and a desperate minefield from Cajun is not the ultimate I wanted to see in that moment. This fight's been long over, and that's a wasted ult.
And now all of a sudden that it's going to be turning on a head. Now Irvine Valley's in the unenviable position of having to assail an objective with nothing to really work with. And I mean, with Iggy being taken out that aggressively, that early, and still having the fight come through, Mizzou all of a sudden has multiple tools to work with here in the end. Iggy, here's the transformation, already into the Wrecking Ball.
Has Wrecking Ball online and gets deleted from it. I'm going to assume a Discord Orb had a heck of a lot to do with that. Iggy has to fly up high, drops into a headshot, shield bash. Lion removed from the fight. Iggy goes for the flank, might be able to, no will possibly find the Zenyatta. Just can't get the lineup in time in the rally. Keeps them up and running. Mizzou keeping them off the point, nobody able to touch, and while it's close, it still counts. Mizzou taking stage 1 of Oasis.
That is one of the unfortunate situations of control. It's that even if you get that 99-0, you need to be able to stack up resources to get that one fight win, right? And unfortunately for Irvine Valley, they keep letting fights go away. They keep trying to spend in these 50-50 engagements rather than, you know, stacking up to a full 5 and kind of just running over their opponents, you know, with that final fight situation. Instead, they're caught with nothing left and are forced to reset. Now we head to University for round number 2. And this is where Brawl is going to come to a head.
2 Reinhardts on the line here. May cast versus Tracer cast. And I think Tommy Salami on the May could be an incredibly valuable character to work with. You roll out the Reinhardt, you make it a lot harder to play. And apparently Irvine has the soul read themselves. They bring out a mirror matchup and truly a battle of the Brawl here as everybody is playing something identical to their opponent.
I like this high ground setup from Mizzou though, because they will, even as Irvine Valley attempts to get onto the objective, you can see Cajun can't play too aggressively because that is, I mean, place part for the May to kind of wall you out. And I mean, with Cats going down, that's sort of a moot point at this stage. You're just going to see Mizzou walk to the point and take full control.
Full control of the point, exactly what Mizzou wanted. They had a little bit of patience to work with. Lion trying to win the 1v1, but Iggy rolls away just in time. A Maywall separates Cajun from their team. Lucio able to get up and around. Immortality Field now online. Flash fan from this cast does enough damage to take them down. Cabby a 2K onto both the Lucio and Reinhardt gives Mizzou an even more notable chance of winning this. Lion finds 2 of their own, and all of a sudden, Irvine right back into this fight. A high noon!
I mean, the Deadeye is is an ultimate that I don't think has a ton of utility in itself, so using it there to force Clairvoyant away from the engagement is more than acceptable. They're going to take control of it. And Irvine Valley has caught Mizzou being a little too casual with their fights. And has punished them for it.
I completely agree. Lion found the opportunity to strike as Mizzou was maybe not hyper-focused on targets enough as Cassidy snuck into the back line, found 3 of the 5 in that previous fight, and then, like you said, the Deadeye comes in clutch. Poor Cajun gets walled out, though. Amplification Matrix not enough to keep him up and running, and when Amp comes out from Mizzou, it feels like it's getting notably more value as a May is just spamming this damage through it. Takes down their counterpart in the form of Cats, and Mizzou gets the point back 31%. A little closer than they might like, but hey, you still got the lead.
Yeah, this is a little. I mean, what Mizzou did there is nearly a mirror of Irvine Valley's first retake, right? A case of a team getting caught on their approach. Actually, they're just gonna go ahead into this next fight without any time spent.
Oh, wow, a double Deadeye. Not something you see super often, but Iggy had the lineup, the Maywall and Immo not there fast enough for Irvine to stay alive. Immortality Field, oh, I get it now. Riz was back in spawn. Mizzou as another one. They only use two ults to win that fight here, LaFon, so they've only got 2 to work with.
Yeah, but Blizzard is one of the best in the setup here, and because Irvine has to approach it, they're walking into it, which is opposite from Cats, who has to get into position to use theirs, and so is a little weaker position overall.
The great shatter from Cajun, able to find 2 in Immortality Field and keep the team up and running. Cajun has to left shift out. A bit of a Venn diagram as the Blizzards make an appearance here. Clairvoyant is the first to fall. Immortality Field keeps Cajun up, but not long enough. And somehow, Mizzou still finding themselves on top of the equation. Flashbang answered out by that cryo freeze. And oh, what a shot. Double headshot from Iggy seals the deal. And even Lions 2K needs to turn to 5 to make it worthwhile.
And it's now just the Lucio in play.
Great tracking.
No, it's not either, because the Lucio's taken out. I don't think you'll be able to touch the point. Yep, that'll be it.
Very
much
strong
more commanding
performance.
Second round. A little bit of spaghetti in a couple of the fights, but overall, they managed to catch most of the dish before it spills to the ground. And they'll take round number 1. And I mean, credit to Irvine Valley, a team that is 2-4. You expect them to perform perhaps a little bit more awkwardly, but they clearly have the setup that they need. They clearly have the understanding of the fights they want to take. It's now down to, I think, a couple of execution errors that they need to fix in map number 2, especially in that brawl setup, right? In round number 1, what gets away from them is the fact that they try and fight on the same ground as Mizzou. They don't need to.
Yeah.
You have control of the percentage board. You don't need to play as if it is a 30-30 percentage tie on the control point. On the second round, you fall prey to not reading your opponent's ultimates, and the economy slips away from you again.
Yeah,
that is, I think, the greatest flaw that they have for themselves at aftermath number 1, which is certainly fixable as they head into hybrid.
Definitely, and like you mentioned, hybrid coming up next, so it's going to be Eichenwald, Kings Row, or Paraiso.
Strike 2 of those from the list.
33% chance of any of them. Yeah, it's going to be Kings Row. I mean, we can pretend it's going to be something else if we want, but if Kings Row is a map pick, I'd be shocked to see us not go to it. We already got shocked with no Oasis, and it looks like we're getting shocked with no Kings Row either. Eichenwald, map number 2. I think this enables the brawl pretty effectively. It makes me think Ryan not going anywhere, but LaFon, you brought up a really strong point that I do want to focus on as well, and it was something we see at the highest rank of Overwatch, where we see teams have the general understanding on both push and control that sometimes losing the point is okay if you're winning the fight.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of teams that aren't able to kind of make that distinction, but I think if we see that step forward coming out from Irvine, they might be able to come out on top of things a little more. It felt like there were a few fights lost because they panicked about losing the point. They overextended and they lost. But if they can find that control and that patience to give up maybe, let's say, 5 or 10% to win the fight, that's going to make it worthwhile 10 out of 10 times.
And I mean, on hybrid specifically, that's not as much of a flaw that can be exposed, right? Because,
right, very true.
You're working on the objective simultaneously to taking fights, which ends up being in your favor. As you highlighted, it's mostly control and push that have that sort of aspect of it. The philosophy of the fight setup, or of giving up the point for a little bit to win the fight, is still applicable in hybrid, but to a much lesser extent, and it's certainly not as exploitable as it is on the other 2 map types. With hybrid, with Eichenwald, I mean, this is another map where the identity of a team can really come into play. And I think Eichenwald specifically, I want to highlight the fact that Iggy went over to the Echo as a sort of counter to the dive that was being run by Irvine Valley. This map, Flyers, especially on point A, have a ton of success historically due to the natural vertical cover of the clock tower in the center of the point and the archways you can kind of operate around, but also the angles which teams can have to kind of play in, right, are naturally really weak to spam from high ground, and being able to access those is going to be critically important. So for Mizzou, I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Echo on point 1.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I think if you are playing a Flyer, it's going to be Echo over Pharah most of the time. And Echo, a very versatile character. She has a pretty easy to hit one-shot combo. She's got a phenomenal ultimate to work with as well. And we were seeing a lot of great value with it. other than the ultimate, if I'm being honest. But the Echo did still look very good, and like you said, Eichenwald first is going to be a great point to utilize that. And back to the initial point of kind of giving up a fight, right? I think the only time we can see that in a situation like Hybrid is on the first point. You allow, let's say, a tick to then go in, and you kind of take it afterwards. You wait for the full 5 and whatever. But like you said, a little harder to exploit here, so I don't think we're going to be seeing that same issue. Mizzou, they're up by 1. They only need to find 3 maps to walk away victorious in a 3-0. And as you mentioned and kind of hinted toward at the beginning of the broadcast, this is a pretty critical win for them.
This is this is Irvine Valley's map pick as well. We have to highlight that.
That's true.
Right? True. So that adds another factor in sort of the argument as to why this is so critically important. Losing your map pick is never a great place to be in, because that takes it takes the control out of your hands, right? Literally in this case, as the final map would be control. But beyond that, it means that you're at the mercy of what your opponent's strong at. And so it's vitally important that Irvine Valley has a great start to this first point. And let's draw attention to the defense here. We talked about the Flyers. There's the Flyer in play. It's going to be Iggy bringing the Pharah alongside the Mercy. So while, yes, the Echo is more flexible than the Pharah is in sort of the general setup, with the Mercy, you kind of hide a lot of the weaknesses of this aerial threat.
Yeah, definitely. Pharah can't thrive really without a Mercy, where some are able to say that Echo maybe can, but on the defense here, I think it makes a lot of sense, as you talked about earlier. A lot of